In my own life. And I am a truly blessed man. And I am one of those men, and here I'm going to shatter another myth for us men. Having a strong spouse in your life is huge.
You.
Um, Huge. And we need to do a better job of recognizing that, because it ain't cool, it ain't manly to talk about how strong your girl is and how she got your back. Yeah, it is, because my wife saved my life. Like I said, I came within a couple hours of eating a bullet. And when I said that last prayer to God, I said, I can't take my life with my wife here with me, because I plan to take my life at my son's gravesite. And that morning, I normally visit his grave by myself. But that morning, my wife didn't get dressed to go to work. She said, I'm going to spend the day with you. And I said, no, today's going to be a real bad day. And I'd already gotten up, dressed the night before. I had cleaned my gun. A couple months leading up to it, I got my affairs in order, went to the lawyers, got the will done, set aside some things that I wanted my children to have. And I was done. I was out. But my wife said, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, I'm spending the day with you. I'm not going to allow you to be alone. And my wife had no idea that I was experiencing suicidal thoughts. She was just being a good woman, quite frankly. And so we sat out there at my son's gravesite with my Bible and our chairs, and I prayed and cried. And I said, hey, God, I can't do this while she's here, but I can always come back tomorrow. And God said to me, you asked me for help, and I sent you help. So all you got to do is take her hand, and you'll be okay. That was 11 years ago now, Calvin. And I'm going to dispel another myth. Just because you experienced suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts in the past does not mean you are always suicidal. I have not thought about taking my life since then. And I want people to understand the myth that people who die by suicide want to die is a myth. 90% of the people who have survived suicide attempts, including myself, have lived to tell people, I did not want to die. I simply couldn't live with the emotional pain that I was in.
Yep.
So it is not a weakness. It's not taking the easy way out. I never prayed and cried so much in my life. The last 2 or 3 years of my son's life, that's all I did. So it was not weakness. I was not looking for the easy way out. I just couldn't face it anymore. But from that, my wife realized that maybe I could help myself by helping others. So she actually found NAMI for me. She was Googling organizations that dealt with mental illness and mental health. And I joined as a volunteer. 3 years later, I was a volunteer member of the board of directors. We needed a new executive director. I took the job on an interim basis for $1 a month. Um, that was how important NAMI was to me, because NAMI is a tremendous resource for people who either themselves, their family members, or a loved one is experiencing or been diagnosed with mental illness. NAMI is a tremendous resource and provides a tremendous amount of education, support groups, whatever you need at no cost to participants. Now, we don't provide direct care. We don't provide psychiatrists and psychologists, but we connect you to those resources. And most of the time it's through community mental health systems. So it's still at no cost to the participants. So I want that out there. But since that time, the interim has been almost 8 years now. I am a full-time mental health and suicide prevention advocate. And as it relates to me being a father, it has made me a better father. I have learned that there is strength in going to counseling. It's not a weakness. I've learned that being able to sometimes allow myself to be vulnerable and lean on my spouse shows strength, not weakness. Now, the dynamic here is that you have to have a spouse that is strong enough to allow us to show that vulnerability and not emasculate us or not tell us, suck it up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're supposed to be the protector provider and get out there. We call that toxic masculinity. And that is something that all men, but it's specifically us Black men, have been victim of. We think we're not supposed to have feelings. We think that feeling depressed or anxiety or the weight of the world on our shoulder is a weakness. That's real. And if we don't deal with that, the truth is it will deal with us. Keeping all that stuff bottled up inside comes out in destroying our relationships with our spouses and our children and anybody else at work, at church, whatever the case may be. But it also shows itself in physical manifestation too. If you don't deal with these traumatic experiences that you've experienced, then it has a way of coming back in terms of hypertension, stroke, heart disease. There are lots of other ways that this is slowly killing us that do not equal suicide. So that is the beginning, I guess I'll say, of my fatherhood story. And I will say this: overall, being a father has been one of the most tremendous blessings in my life. Even though I lost a son, I am very blessed because I valued spending time with my children growing up. I coached Little League, I coached AAU. I did all those things not because I was trying to make professional athletes, because I wanted to spend time with my children, because I wanted to have an opportunity to build a relationship and build a bond that would last a lifetime. And I'll tell you this, and then I'll let you talk because I talk a lot. One of one of my fondest memories was about a year before my son passed. We were commuting from Grand Rapids. I was a toy buyer at Meyer, and we're commuting back here to the Detroit area. And a Disney World commercial came on the radio, and they talked about going to Disney World is for many a once in a lifetime experience, because we all know how expensive it is to go to Disney World. And my son looked over at me, and keep in mind, he's 22 years old at the time. And he looked over at me and he said, "Dad, it's a once in a lifetime experience for most, but you took me every year of my life." And that's not to speak to financial wealth. That spoke to a bond that we had. We went to Disney World because, again, my children were athletes, and we would go down there and play baseball tournaments and AAU tournaments and that kind of thing. But that was his way of telling me he had a good life. And later in that conversation, I don't remember what came on the radio, but something about suicide came on. And keep in mind, I knew nothing then that I know now. But I remember asking my son directly, I said, "Have you ever had suicidal thoughts?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "But I would never hurt myself." And when I asked him why, he said, "Because I know no matter how much trouble I'm in, no matter where I am in the world, my Father will come for me." He said, "Because you show up even when I don't want you to."